Hello everyone and welcome back to AV Chess Lab. Today we're going to dive deep into the waters of the Danish Gambit. In this opening, you sacrifice 1, 2, and sometimes even 3 pawns. Why? In order to get good control of the center and quick development of your pieces. I will show you some of the most hidden power and attacking potential and the many ways your opponent can go wrong, leading to an easy victory. We're going to start by discussing what happens if your opponent does not accept the gambit. What happens if he does? And what happens if he or she gets too greedy? Okay, so how do we start the Danish Gambit? So we play e4, and our opponent plays e5. And of course, this makes a lot of sense, since e4 is by far the most popular move against e4. So if you're an e4 player, you have to have the Danish Gambit as part of your arsenal of weapons. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to play it all the time, but it needs to be part of it. Okay, so from here, we follow with d4. And this is the first time that your opponent can decide that he doesn't want to go for any complications that he's not familiar with. So he can go for knight to c6, for example. But here we simply just capture the pawn, and after knight captures, we play f4 and just develop our pieces normally. Notice that we have very strong pawns in the center. This knight has to either go back to c6 or g6, and we're just going to continue with knight to c3, knight to f3, bishop c4, and castle kingside with a very good game. So after d4, the most natural move is to recapture here, and after c3, we have the Danish Gambit. So we have a few lines here from which your opponent can choose to not go and accept the gambit. If again knight to c6, we simply capture the pawn and thank your opponent for giving you such a strong center. If instead of knight to c6, your opponent plays a move to d5, what I recommend here is to simply take the pawn, queen takes, and pawn takes on d4. Yes, you're going to have an isolated pawn, but since the queen is also early, we're going to be able to target it with our minor pieces and be able to develop with tempo. For example, if knight to f6, we play knight to c3, bishop to b4 pinning the queen. We go knight to f3, castles, bishop to e3, knight to c6, bishop to d3, rook e8, castle. Now we're trying to take the queen, so bishop takes e3, pawn takes e3, and just notice that our bishops are going to be targeting the king side. Our pawn's ready to go to c4. We're ready to put a rook on the open file. This rook can also come to e1. We can play h3 just to give our king some safety. So it's just a perfectly fine equal position. So what else can black do in this position to not accept the gambit? The move that's going to test you the most is going to be queen to e7. And from here, what I recommend is to simply capture and giving away the pawn on e4. Black will take, you play bishop to e3. And again, the same idea. The queen is in the center, so we're going to be able to target the queen with tempo. So in most cases, knight to f6 is played. We play knight to c3, bishop to b4, pinning the queen. We go queen to d2, now with the threat to take the queen. So bishop takes, pawn takes. And notice that we're just simply going to put our knight to f3, our bishop to d3, and cancel with a perfectly fine equal position, although we're still down a pawn. Another move that black has tried in this position is pawn to d3. And here we simply just capture the pawn, and after any of black moves, we play c4. If any checks, we simply bishop there, takes, and notice that we're just going to develop our pieces naturally and castle, and again, we have a pretty good position. Okay, so let's take a look now at what would happen if your opponent decides to accept the gambit. With d takes e3, we have two moves, knight takes e3 and bishop to c4. After knight to c3, opening theory today suggests that bishop b4, bishop c4, bishop takes, pawn takes is the way to go. But if you ask me, we have the bishop pair, we have a pawn in the center, we're ready to go knight to f3 and castle. So this should be a pretty even, equal game, and you should have plenty of chances to attack your opponent. So let's take a quick look at knight to c6. Here we simply play bishop c4, and black can go wrong in a variety of moves here. If they go bishop c5, for example, we can simply go bishop f7, king takes, queen d5 check, king back, and we take the bishop. We recapture our pawn back, material is even. Now black's king is stuck in the center, it can no longer castle. We have free development with knight to f3, bishop to g5. We can castle either queenside or kingside and have a very strong, easy position to play. If instead, let's say, bishop to b4 is played here, we're simply going to continue with knight to f3. And black can again go wrong with the move knight to f6. Here we go e5, attacking the knight. So the knight has to make a decision. If he goes back to g8, we simply castle, comes out this way, and we have free development. We're going to put our rooks in the center, and this is a very good position for white as well. If instead, going to g8 after e5, if the knight goes to g4, this is a big mistake. We simply capture on f7, king takes, we go knight g5 this time, the king goes back somewhere, and we capture the knight. Again, material is even, and we have a very strong attack still. Notice that if black decides to capture this pawn, the queen can simply capture on b4. Another variation would be to go for knight to f6. And here we're simply going to go e5, attack the center, put pressure right away. The best that black can do here is to go queen to e7. If the knight goes back to g8 where it came from, okay, that makes no sense. We simply continue with knight to f3, bishop g5, bishop d3. I mean, this should be over. So if queen to e7, we simply go queen e4. Notice this knight has nowhere to go. d5 is taken, e4, g4, h5. So what can he do? Back to g8. Again, we're simply going to go knight to f3, play queen e4. We can even go knight to d5, play bishop d3 in case they castle kingside, attacking checkmate. This should be pretty easy, pretty simple. Black is busted here. Another setup that black can use in this type of situations is an early d6. So it can go something like knight to c6. We always develop bishop to c4, and then play d6. And this prevents us from moving the pawn to e5, attacking in the center, which is causing a lot of problems. But here we simply go knight to f3, knight to f6, and we get this shot with knight to g5. The only good way to protect the f7 pawn is to go knight to e5. We simply go here, and if they go h6 here, there's a nasty little trick here. We go f4. If they take, we take. When they take, we simply take on f7. Notice that the king cannot take because we simply capture the queen. So after they come here, there's many ways to play this position. The best one is probably to go queen to b3, keeping the king in the center, not trading queens, and then going for something like bishop to g5, rook to d1, and winning the game. So let's take a look here at bishop to c4, and what happens if black simply captures the pawn on b2, and of course we have to take. What are the attacking possibilities here for white? There are ideas of taking on f7, taking on g7, also going knight to f3, e5 in some situations, castling kingside, putting the queen on d4 with checkmate ideas on the square on g7. So let's take a quick look and see how we can do all of this. So after bishop takes, let's say bishop b4 check. Knight c3, knight c6. We simply develop, both sides do the same thing, castle, castle, and knight to d5. And from here, black can go wrong very easily. For example, knight takes, pawn takes, knight to a5, attacking our bishop. We go to d3. Now, if a move like d6 is played here, which would be an absolute blunder, we simply go queen a4, and one of these two pieces is going to drop. So if instead of this, of knight to a5, for example, black decides to go maybe knight to e5, we simply win the game here by playing queen to d4, attacking checkmate. And black protects on f5 with the knight, and we go queen g4. They protect the knight with the bishop, and we go bishop d3. Notice that we're attacking the knight with two pieces. We're also attacking this bishop, and we're attacking checkmate on g7. So there's no way to protect against all three of them, and we're going to end up a piece here. Another possibility here, after bishop to b4 check, is to go king to f1. And this has a lot of venom. For starters, this bishop is already attacking on g7. So if black does nothing to prevent this, we're simply going to take there and then take the rook and win the game. So the best move in this position is to go knight f6. And we simply play e5. If the knight goes anywhere, like back for example, or h5, g4, I mean h5, g4 is just bad, we simply capture. So if it goes back to g8, we simply go bishop takes f7, king takes f7, queen to b3, and we take the bishop with a very good game. So the best way to continue here is to go d5. But again, here we can have this option, we check, pawn here, we take, and this obviously doesn't look very good for black. So the best move here is actually to go knight to d7. And again, here we can actually sacrifice another pawn, considering that we're attacking this square. So after they take, we take rook g8, and we can play queen to h5 check. And this position is not very pretty for black either. And we should have a pretty comfortable, easy position to play. To finish up, I want to show you a game that I played when I was around the 1600 level. The game went e4, e5, d4, e takes d4, c3. My opponent decided to go for the gambit. I played bishop c4, and of course he took twice. We were both pretty low rated, so it was normal that my opponents just took there. Bishop to c3, bishop b4 was played, knight to c3, and they continue in the same variation that we've been discussing so far, with knight to f6, both sides castle, and here I played knight to d5. Here my opponent took, I took, played knight to a5, and I played bishop to d3. Of course, they didn't fall for either the d6 or the knight to e7 that we discussed previously in the video. They went for b6. But here I simply just played queen to a4. My opponent protected his bishop with queen to e7. I went a3. My opponent went bishop to c5. And after d6, my opponent took with the queen. And I went queen to e4, attacking checkmate, and attacking the rook. So my opponent had to resign. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hope you can win some easy games by putting some of these attacking moves together. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, stay safe, have a great day, and always respect your opponent. See you next time.